Hey, Earthlings, Earthlings, Earthlings. So, welcome along. And this is a bit of a cobbled together show. I'll give you that warning already. And so it's kind of not really a time tunnel, but it is in the sense that there's some archive material. So I decided to kind of surround this one around the National Animal Rights March in Britain, which is coming up on this Saturday. And there's been a few developments, interesting stuff, not least the fact that Andy Atkinson, the famous vegan filmmaker, has decided to make it a global event. So he's worked out a way that people who are streaming on the day can stream to him, and then he can stream to the world, as it were. So even though people are going to be all over the place in terms of geographically, it means that everyone can, in a sense, take place. So that's the plan. That's the plan. Now, the plan for us tonight, is the fact that I'm going to play an announcement that Andy recorded, and then we'll switch to the archive part of it. And so that's the plan. And if I can get my technology working, which obviously I can't, we'll see if I can get this working. So first up will be Andy.
Hi everyone. A little bit of sad and a little bit of good news, I suppose. The sad first in the sense that I will no longer be able to personally attend the march on Saturday. However, the bit of good news, I suppose, that can come out of this is in its place, we will be hosting a full day of coverage of the march on YouTube for anyone who wants to participate, anyone that wants to come and join us, anyone that wants to come and say hello. If you want to live stream whilst you're there, add photographs, videos, all of that kind of thing. It's exactly the sort of stuff that we're looking to showcase. It means that we can stream the speeches live for anyone who also isn't able to attend, which I know after the various rail strikes and other things, that's quite a lot of people, and obviously anyone who isn't in the UK. So I actually think that this could open the door for quite a lot of other people to be involved now and participate in some way, shape or form. It encourages others, if you want to record a video that you'd like to be played, a message to the other activists or some kind of speech, something along those lines, feel free to do so and get in touch. But yeah, I mean, it's as simple as if you're already attending the march and you're there and you would like to be featured in some way, just simply tag the YouTube or the Facebook page with your live stream or your video and we'll showcase it. It will just be a roundup of the events throughout the day and hopefully live coverage of all the speeches. And the more people that want to participate and interact in any way, shape or form, then the more the merrier, and hopefully see you all there. It is a little bit disappointing that I can't attend in person, but however, looking at this in a positive way, there's a lot of people that also can't attend, and rather than being downbeaten about my personal appearance, let's make sure that actually all of those people can attend, whether it's just in spirit or not. Thank you and have a good day.
silent march, and along our route we'll be stopping at a few locations prominent in historical and current animal use, starting with world headquarters of Unilever, then to London headquarters of Cargill, and then the offices of Marine Stewardship Council. Our journey will acknowledge the current plight of other animals and also explore what we can do today to help bring transformative change. We will be finishing the march right back here at Smithfield Market, where there will be lots of animal-free food for you to enjoy. It's so good to see so many of you here. I know we have a lot of different groups and organisations represented. We've got HUNSABs. We've got those trying to end the killing of badgers. We've got anti-fur and anti-vivisection campaigners. We've got those involved in refuge and rescue. We've got our vegan outreachers. And of course, we have got lots of animal rebels here taking part in the 2 weeks of action. I believe we also have people here representing something very close to my heart at the moment, Free the MBR Beagles. And they're doing such great activism up at Camp Beagle. It would take too long to mention all of you individually, but thank you so much for being here. And thank you for everything that you're doing. So today is an opportunity for animal advocates, activists, and allies to come together in solidarity with our fellow animals. A chance to recognise that we are not alone in our fight against the systemic and ubiquitous oppression of those not born into human bodies. This is also a time to acknowledge the anger, the sorrow and the grief that we feel, and we should be angry. Anger is an emotion triggered by injustice, and there is no greater injustice in size and scale and duration than that inflicted by humans on the other animals. The sorrow and the grief that we feel are testament to how much we care. And if we didn't care, we would do nothing. And so perhaps we can learn to not only accept those emotions as part of our allyship, but also to channel them positively, to drive us to take action for those we stand with. As advocates for the other animals, we need to send a strong, clear, abolitionist message that not being cruel is not enough. Being kind is not enough. We are not here to beg for mercy or make a plea for pity. We are here to demand justice for our fellow animals. We are here to fight for respect. The respect of their rights not to be bred, used, or killed for others' gain. The right not to be displaced from their homes, have their habitats destroyed, their families torn apart, and their resources plundered. For their right to be respected. A fundamental problem at the heart of other animal oppression and the climate catastrophe that is so detrimental to billions of free living animals is human supremacy and exceptionalism. This arbitrary hierarchy we have created with some humans so conveniently placed at the top, means that our fellow animals are seen by most as less than, as property, as mere disposable commodities to be used as we will, to be consumed, to be worn, to be tested on, to be our laborers, to be our entertainers, to be killed if they get in our way. And so in order to build better relationships with other animals, we must challenge human supremacy and exceptionalism whenever and wherever we find it, including in ourselves. Our fellow animals are all but invisibilized in our society. Their experiences often hidden away in confined cages, in darkened sheds, in sterile laboratories, in stinking, crowded spaces behind high walls and barbed wire fences. Others are being oppressed in plain sight. Those bred to be bought and sold as so-called pets. Those that are being hunted and murdered. Those being forced to work for or entertain us. Those we call vermin because we think the earth belongs to us and so refuse to share spaces. Those whose homes and lives we destroy as we spread and sprawl our human-centered world to monopolize every part of this beautiful planet. And so it is our duty as allies to bring the stories of those hidden away into the light, to make sure their experiences are seen and heard. We need to amplify their voices, to assist them in their resistance, and make no mistake, they do resist. We need to learn to coexist harmoniously with free living animals and leave them space to thrive and flourish. Other animal oppression is unthinkable in terms of the horror, unimaginable in terms of numbers, but let us not forget that each one of the trillions of those bred, used, displaced, and killed every year is a unique individual. And so what I'd love to invite each and every one of you to do today is to bring to mind one individual, perhaps someone you know and have a relationship with, perhaps someone you don't, but whose story has touched you. And today I'd like you to keep that individual in your mind and in your heart and march for them. And today speak about this individual with your fellow advocates. Say their name, bring their story into the light, share their experiences and honor their life, so that together we refuse to let the world ignore them and keep them invisible. Together we challenge the tyranny of human-animal relations and say here today, we see you, we hear you, we will never stop fighting for you. Until all cages are empty, until all are free. And so we will take a minute's silence to bring to mind these individuals and to honor the life of each and every one of our earthling kin who has suffered or will suffer injustice at the hands of humankind. Thank you, everyone.
You know, we're doing better because we're giving them a cage that's, 5 square inches bigger. They're still captive. They're still in prison. So,
exactly. And it's like you say, the welfare argument really doesn't cut it, because actually, as animal rights advocates, we want to end all use, no matter how those other animals are being treated, whether they have a life of luxury in a palatial, facility that caters for their every whim desire, and then they go off to be, have research done on them, tests done on them, or they're killed and eaten or worn, whatever it might be. It's irrelevant. The treatment really, of course, it's not irrelevant to them in terms of their daily lives. Right. It's not irrelevant in that way. I don't mean it in that way, but what I mean is none of that is the fundamental argument is that we want to end all use, regardless of the treatment. And that's something I think, one, that we don't seem to get across very well in our movement. We can conflate welfare and rights and all of these things, and the message doesn't get out there. And even when you do get into the mainstream media, the journalists conflate the whole thing and talk about, these activists are trying to end animal cruelty. It's like, no, yeah, we want to stop the bloody cruelty, but fundamentally we want to stop the use completely. We want these other individuals' rights to be respected, and we want justice, and we want them to have a life where they flourish. And it's so frustrating, Mark.
No, it is. I mean, you said it beautifully, Wendy, and it is.
Race, gender, and other identity categories are all historically constructed using similar mechanisms such as animalization, objectification, sexualization, depersonalization, denaming, and so on.
You're on mute, Wendy.
That's helpful. I'm on mute. Yeah. that's been the catchphrase of the year, isn't it, since COVID? You're on mute. Unmute yourself. So I was just saying, welcome to the show, and Brian is here to help us celebrate International Women's Day as well. He insisted. So we're here. We wanted to mark the day, and perhaps not surprisingly, in our patriarchal world, women's voices are often overlooked, ignored, suppressed, and invisibilized, while men more easily rise to prominence. And this is true even in our movement, which is made up predominantly of women. So to mark International Women's Day, we will be exploring the work and ideas of some of the inspiring women within the animal movement. So from the early pioneers of the vegan movement, such as Eva Batt and Kathleen Janaway, to contemporary feminist writers, speakers, and activists, such as Carol J. Adams, Joan Denea, Patrice Jones, Dr. Coralie Wren, Af and Silko, and Kath Clements. And that, of course, is not an exhaustive list. There are many more we could have focused on. But women do really enrich the movement with their philosophical ideas, practical application, and a wealth of wisdom in their visions for a liberated world. So please do share your perspectives. As always, in the comments, we'll try and get through as many as we can. And say hello as well. Let us know you're here so we can say hello. Nella, I think you had a few words to say as well.
I just wanted to say that women have always been on the front lines of any struggle against oppression. And this movement is no different. Women activists, women academics, women authors, and today we'll celebrate their work. And we remember those who lost their lives defending other animals and fighting against injustice, like Jill Phipps and Regan Russell. But this is not something we should do once a year. Female voices should be heard every day. And as activists, we should be aware of whose voice we try to amplify and whose voice we try to silence.
Well said, Nella. Well said. And speaking of women, actually, Deb has just made a comment. Said, hi, Deb. Hi, nice to see you. She's just messaged to say that she's just listened to a podcast that I did with Louise Ryan. Louise is, again, an amazing a woman activist, been in the movement for decades, and I did an interview with her, and she tells some incredible stories, so do check that out. That's on Thrive Vegan World. Sorry to plug my own podcast on here, but that's on Thrive Vegan World podcast. But I'd love to get Louise's story out there, and there were some other women on that podcast as well. So yeah, we've got quite a few here now. We've got Deb. I just said hello to Deb. Hey, we've got Vegan Pixie Warrior. Hey there. And we've got, I'm still going to go back to the top. Sorry. We've got Sentient X, Grumpy Vegan Grandad. We have, I think, John Holton. We have Michael Askew. I was going to say Wendy McGovern, that's me. and so we've got Amber Sky, and we've got Vegan Gaze. And did I miss anyone coming back down? Terry. Hi there, Terry. Nice to see you. Oh, Ronnie. Hello. I was just mentioning Louise as well. Ronnie's listened to that podcast as well, so it is fabulous. And we've got Jennifer. We've got Tracy Clayton. Hi, Tracy. We've got Gawain, and we've got Bernie V. I think I got everyone there. So nice to see everyone.
Nina from Finland.
Oh, sorry, Nina. Sorry, Nina, I didn't mean to miss you. So I think, Roger, you have a little something to share with us about some women activists from the 1980s, by any chance? You can't do that. You can't give me the finger on International Women's Day. I'm not having it.
I withdraw.
Wipe that finger in. Yeah, retract the finger.
I withdraw my finger, which any way you like. Okay, so really, the main thing we're doing today is going through some of the ideas from the theorists and the writers. So I just wanted to talk about a few of the activists that I've known from a long time ago until now. I'm not going to say from 1980, but it was about that time. So the only writer I'm going to mention actually is Rebecca Hall, who is not going to be featured today, but she was kind of like a writer and activist in a sense, because she started, she had a book called Voiceless Victims that some people will remember, but it's a bit obscure. And also she started a group called Writers Against Vivisection with her partner, G.F. Newman. So that really is the only, as it were, writer. So I just wanted to mention a few activists. So I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly. Nancy Phipps, I didn't know Jill, unfortunately, but Nancy was really nice person. Paddy Broughton, Margaret Manzoni, Mimi Spence, Jenny Spence, Beryl Spence, Spence family, very active back then, Wendy. Debbie Smith, Serena Rowlands, Irina Corolina, and all the other women who were very active in the formation and maintenance of the Vegan Information Project. Sandra Higgins of Go Vegan World, Vivian Smith, Bernie Wright. We mentioned on a recent show that Bernie had been ill. I can now report that Bernie is out of hospital and seems to be recovering. Alison McKeon, Fiona Hughes. Some people might know Fiona as Fiona Callender. Some nameless women associated with the LF, so I won't actually mention their names. I want to mention my sister, Lynn Yates, who went vegan in the early 80s and became the National Secretary for the Council for the Prevention of Cruelty by Angling, one of the first active groups against angling. And I think she was the National Secretary when I think they had about 7 members or something like that. But I do remember kind of printing out all kind of stuff and posting it everywhere and everything else. And then finally, I want to say Wendy and Nella of the present day as incredible women activists of our time. And finally, I want to mention Jennifer Faust, who's an activist at the moment with the VIP. So that's me. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm ticking them off as I go, so I think I've got everybody. To be honest, I could have put Louise Ryan in there. I could have put loads of people. I tried to make a list of 10, and I found it was absolutely possible. It was like me picking my 10 best bowling tracks. It just wasn't possible at all. So I ended up with all those. So yeah, there you go. But these are activists, the background of the movement in the grassroots. So there's always been loads and loads of vegan activists who are women.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, well
now
Roger,
what do you do, folks?
So we've got a whole bunch of different quotes and a few clips. We'll get through as much as we can to sort of showcase and just highlight some of the work from different kind of writers, philosophers, activists. Hey, thanks, Deb. So maybe we can start with the first quote, if that's okay. I think.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have the sorry, Roger, you going to say something?
Yeah, no, sorry, Tom, I shouldn't have said that. Go ahead.
That's okay. So yeah, this is a quote from Eva Batt, one of the early pioneers. I think she did a lot of great work back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, involved with the Vegan Society and a lot of other social justice campaigns. And the quote reads, Veganism is one thing and one thing only, a way of living which avoids exploitation, whether it be for our fellow men, humankind today, the animal population, or the soil upon which we rely for our very existence.
Yeah, I think that was correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 1965 when that particular one was written, and I use that quote. It seems to be odd to talk about the exploitation of the soil, but I think we know what Eva Batt was getting at, in the sense talking about things like topsoil, which vegans rely on, and that kind of stuff, and really talking about I guess in the end kind of veganic gardening or veganic agriculture. But again, it goes to show the kind of expansive view of veganism. In my view, I think this is one of the best quotes from the pioneers.
Yeah, they had that real.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wendy.
That's okay. I was just saying they had that real vision of that connection of the kind of oppressions and of other animals, humans, and the environment, like which we talk about today. But even then, they had that kind of vision.
The use of the word men is obviously explained by the time this quote was written.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Roger. Can I ask you a question, Roger? Actually, because you're a little knowledgeable on the pioneers, let's say. Why do you think it is? And is this again? Is this related to kind of the patriarchal world we're in? That it's Donald Watson that always gets kind of, but he's the most well-known of the pioneers, and he's the one that gets quoted and the one that everyone knows about and would mention. Whereas obviously Eva Batt, Kathleen Janaway and others were obviously quite active within the start of the vegan movement
as well. Yeah.
And why is it, do you think, that we don't know their names? Is it that invisibilization of women that we're so normalized? Do you think it's partly that, or is there anything else going on?
Well, I think it could be analysed as that, and certainly that would be a feminist-inspired interpretation. That the loudest voices are usually the male ones. At the moment, in terms of the most prominent people in our movement, a lot of those are men as well. So yeah, it's something like that. I mean, like if you think about Donald Watson, who married Dorothy Morgan, who became Dorothy Watson or Dot Watson. They are the two that invented the word veganism, but most people attribute it just to Donald. But yeah, so the good people, there's a couple of sociologists, well, there's three really, but there's the two main sociologists, Kate Stewart and Matthew Cole. They're working at the Donald Watson Archive, and they found that they were at a theatre together when they came up with the word vegan. But as usual, as it were, the man kind of takes the credit. Actually analysing why that seems to persist over time is really interesting, and it's probably multifaceted faceted, but it's certainly the case that men tend to be the ones who become the spokespersons and the ones who become remembered. And it's certainly the men in the pioneer stage of our movement that are remembered the most. We think of 3 or 4 names, but not necessarily the women,
Yeah. Should we bring the next one? I think a fellow pioneer, the next one. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just letting it roll on. Hang on a second.
So this one reads, compassionate living is about making connections between the way we live and the way others suffer, between consumerism, industrial development, and the destruction of the planet. It involves a commitment to work non-violently for change, promoting lifestyles that are possible for all the world's people, sustainable within the resources of the planet, environmentally friendly, and free from all exploitation of animals and of people. And that's Kathleen Janaway. So again, it's that vision of and that interconnectedness that we see a lot with the feminist thinkers in the movement, actually, that sort of intersectionality or entanglement or multidimensional connections between these injustices, which I think, again, really highlights when people try to reduce veganism down. It's just about this. It gets reduced to a diet, or it gets reduced to it's just about other animals, and we know that that's the focus, and it definitely is, but the scope was so much bigger. And I think it's really good to highlight that people often don't realize the scope of veganism. They only focus on the very reduced element and the focus.
What about this bit? I mean, Nella mentioned that some of the language, say for Eva Batt, writing in the 60s, this one I think is more like 80s and probably even early 90s, but I'm not sure if we would now say this thing about promoting lifestyles that are possible for all the world's people. The idea of a white person saying that might be problematic now, might it? In the sense that, it's, I mean, that kind of smacks a little bit of colonialism, doesn't it? What do you think?
It can, but on the other hand, there is a talk in the movement about being inclusive and taking under consideration the specific struggles different people from different cultures face when it comes to veganism.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not saying that one, as it were, fits all, but again, I think some people might just rankle at that a little bit. I mean, I agree with Wendy. I think the actual breadth of this is really amazing. It's hard to imagine anybody in the modern movement putting so much into a couple of sentences, really. I mean, there's absolutely loads of things, including presumably you could read the consumerism, industrial development thing as an anti-capitalist sentiment. You would think destruction of the planet. You could read that as environmentalism. So it really does incorporate a load of the values of the vegan movement in its kind of overarching, kind of expansive way, which I think, I think Kathleen Janaway was quite remarkable, really. And in some ways, I suppose, whilst the vegan society kind of moderated, which social movements do, Corey Wren would talk about that, I don't think Kathleen Janaway was going to go that way, and so she split away from the vegan society, and she formed Movement for Compassionate Living, which kind of had some kind of anarchic themes about it, talking about even things like abolishing money and stuff. So doing a lot of stuff by bartering between autonomous vegan villages and this kind of stuff. So I think that she was very aware that social movements tend to kind of moderate over time, and she wasn't having it, and so she left one of the early splits of the movement, I suppose. Should I move on, or does anybody else want to say anything about Kathleen Janaway?
I just want to say that, yeah, from like doing the bit of research that I did for the show, that it appears to me like, yeah, there's like this continuing thread of the pioneering women in the movement saw these different connections through their experience, through their intuition, and I think this quote kind of epitomizes a lot of Kathleen's own lived experience, through the political kind of work that she did through socialism, the campaigns for peace, and all these other things. I think probably, I'm guessing, but I'm wondering if that kind of informed and gave her this kind of holistic understanding and able to make these connections to veganism and animal rights through that. So yeah, it's a beautiful quote.
And just before we move on, that maybe, I can't quite remember now, but that may be the theatre that I was referring to without knowing the name. If people want to check that kind of detail, you can go to Vegan Sociologists on YouTube, and there's a kind of lecture given by Kate Stewart and Matthew Cole about the Donald Watson archive. It's really, really interesting. Should I move on, folks?
And also, before we move on, Roger, you've written a series about the pioneers of the movement. So if someone wants to read them, where should they go to?
Well, I'm not totally sure now, because they were on VegFest Express, but that's been superseded now by the new VegFest magazines. So I'm not totally sure where they are, although I did post something that Tim Barford posted this morning, and it was about Kathleen Janaway. And so it was my essay about Kathleen Janaway. Tim posted it because I didn't know what it was, and so I kind of linked him with that. So I suppose if you click on that, you could see if the other ones are still there. So I don't know whether they've gone back up again or whether they've gone back up in a new place. I'm not quite sure. I kind of lost track of my own writing really a little bit there.
It's a really interesting series. If anyone can actually find it, it is really, really interesting. I learned so much from Roger's writings on that.
Goes all the way up to that guy. What's his name? Oh, you know, that guy who co-founded the LF. What's he called?
Oh, I can't think who you're talking about.
No,
some nobody.
Yeah. Apparently he turned 70 recently, but I didn't care. So.
We don't mean it, Ronnie. He's there somewhere. He's here.
Well, here's another one of those big statements.
Yeah, very big statement from Kath Clements, and the quote reads: "Veganism is about having a consistent approach to human rights, animal rights, ecology, and the world food problems."
Yeah, that's from the 1990 book. I said the last time we used this quote that I would have put animal rights first in that list of things, but the meaning would be the same, I suppose. Of course, ecology I think this is obvious, really, I guess, but ecology used to be the name for environmentalism. So, but, I think everyone kind of knows that in a way.
So we can see that until recently, the scope of the movement was very clear to everyone.
Yeah, I always give the anecdote of the fact that, when I came in as a SAB, it was really common to get leaflets from various groups of all kinds of things in the van. And so you would find yourself going, we used to SAB twice or three times a week in those days, but you would certainly SAB on a Saturday. So you go on a SAB on a Saturday, you'd go on a demo on a Sunday, or even some kind of raid in an hour or something. And then on the Monday, you might find yourself a Rock Against Racism gig. And then on the Wednesday, you might find yourself on a Reclaim the Night march. And we just kind of did it all in those days without really thinking that was a kind of issue at all. It was just entangled naturally in a way. Should I move on, or got anything else to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Give it a few seconds. Quite a few seconds.
So this is from Dr. Corey Lee Wren, and this quote reads: "Given that species, class, race, gender, and other identity categories are all historically constructed using similar mechanisms such as animalization, objectification, sexualization, depersonalization, denaming, and so on, it is important to apply an intersectional perspective to achieve a more accurate understanding of oppression for non-human animals and humans alike. So Dr. Corey Lee Wren is a sociologist and vegan feminist, and specializes in other animal and human relations. So she's currently lecturing at Kent University. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kent University.
And she's also the co-founder of the International Association of Vegan Sociologists.
Yeah.
And she set up what was it called? Is it vegan?
The Vegan Feminist Network.
Vegan Feminist Network. That's right. I think she said she's not very active on there at the moment, but it's really great. There's some really great content in there, and I think she will get more active again. I think there's blogs in there and some great kind of articles and things to look to.
You can also, she has a website, and if folks are interested, you can go on her website and subscribe to her email newsletter, which she sends out, like, I think it's every month or so, but there's some really good pieces in there that she puts in the
and
newsletters.
She's very active on Twitter as well, I believe.
Yes, and today, if you go to her Facebook page, she shared one of her presentations on women's history in the movement, which is very interesting. And also,
this is one of her books.
Yes.
And, we can't see you, Roger, so I'll put mine up.
That's on my reading list too.
And if you
Roger,
go
we've got. Sorry, I was just saying to Roger, we've got a quote up, so we couldn't see his
book. If you go to her Facebook page, you can also have free access to a lot of the articles she's written on several issues, and they are very interesting.
Yeah, some really great ideas, because actually it's vegan feminism is kind of extending from ecofeminism, which is, you know, that whole kind of response to that male-centric view. Sorry, just grabbing my book here. That response to male-centrism and of environmental and philosophical thought, and but it explicitly recognizes marginalized groups as well. So really kind of looks at that intersectional perspective, very critical of the gendering process, often informed by spiritualism, intuition, and emotion. This is ecofeminism, and it's the ethic of care and community, which is emphasized over and above individual rights, for example. And it does incorporate an activist component, but I think for Dr. Corey Lee Wren, she does have a few differences to that, in that she believes that the care ethic could leave those without rights unprotected. So she doesn't just completely advocate for that feminist ethic of care. She just still believes that we need some rights. And also the ethic of care seems patriarchal and patronizing as well, or like, you know, people just need to be cared for kind of thing. And also the fact that it perhaps just looking at care could reify the gender essentialism, in that saying almost, because ecofeminists look at how things are put into like a dualism, like man versus woman, and man is higher, or culture versus nature, culture is higher, reason versus emotion, reason is higher. It looks at those kind of dualities, but it's saying that perhaps if we only look at the ethic of care, then we're actually reifying that, we're kind of reinforcing that, because we're saying, oh, but if we want to be different to the patriarchal system, we're just going to look at care, which then essentializes that as a feminine trait and attribute. So that could be a little bit problematic as well. But it's really interesting to sort of to look at that extension of ecofeminism and bring it into like vegan feminism. Some interesting ideas.
Yeah, of all those dualisms that you mentioned there, Wendy, do you think the rationality associated with male and emotion associated with female is fair? I mean, do you think there is that, you know, strict kind of dividing line between the genders in that sense?
Do you mean, do I think there is, or do you think I think that it's created that to seem that way? Do you think it actually, do you mean, does it actually?
Yeah.
So I don't believe it's actual. I don't believe that we are essentially rational or emotional, but I feel like it's like a construction. It's part of that gender construction where, you know, as soon as a child is born, the first question that is asked is, oh, you're having a boy or a girl? And immediately that child will be treated differently depending on what gender they're attributed to be. And so, you know, you'll dress the girl in pink, you dress the boy in blue, and you give them different toys, and then they internalize different messages their whole life. And I think one of those messages is boys don't show emotions, boys don't have emotions, boys don't cry, man up, don't be a sissy. All these kind of messages that boys hear, you know, and then girls are given, oh, you know, that you'll cry like a girl or giggle like a girl, or you're too emotional. And it's I think it's created like that, it's constructed like that, but I don't think that's true. I think that we all push down emotions because we feel that they're not valued. Emotion isn't valued in society. We value reason and logic above all else, and so we push down emotions. And I think that's part of the problem of the world, is that we don't know how to regulate our emotions, and so we're all a walking time bomb mess of emotional suppression. So that's part of the problem.
It's really interesting you said all that, because I'm kind of taking part in this series that's on Virgin Media, and it's called Eating with the Enemy. There was two guys talking on one of the episodes. I can't remember which one it is. Might have been the one that I'm on, episode 6. I'm not sure. But they were debating about, oh, boys don't cry, and this guy was saying, oh, is that a bit too much for your macho thing? And he was going, I think so, because, you know, as much as I want to, I can't kind of cry. So I can cry at Hollywood films, but if, say, somebody dies or something who's close to me, I can't cry. And he said, I was brought up with the boys don't cry type ideology. And he said the weird thing about that, well, this is really interesting in terms of speciesism, is said that nobody actually said that to me. My mother didn't say boys don't cry, and my teacher didn't say boys don't cry, but I still got the message. And that's the power of an ideology. You know, it's really, you know. So there's a little bit in here, the bit about depersonalization, denaming and everything, sexualization, of course, which kind of leads into Carol Adams' work, doesn't it? You know, so that's going to be interesting, because I think we might be moving to Carol fairly soon. Should I move on, folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a few seconds. The reason there's a delay, folks, is that there is.
Oh, that was quick.
I know, yeah. I know. I'm getting better at this job. It's just the reason there's a delay is I've had to make a film out of these slides, because my slide thing won't work on StreamYard anymore. Just not that anybody cares, but I just thought I'd explain it anyway.
So yeah, we're grateful to have had Carol on the show. I think it was back at the tail end of last year, and yeah, she's a huge figure in the movement. You know, proponent of radical ecofeminism, and has written numerous books, notably The Pornography of Meat, The Sexual Politics of Meat, and yeah, she's I think forwarded and on other books as well, and given lots of talks, and yeah, just a huge figure. And this quote reads, "Metaphoric boring that depends on violation yet fails to protest the originating violence does not acknowledge interlocking oppressions." And I think for me, this is just a brilliant quote, because I think it sums up the fact that, you know, that forms of oppression do link together, and that if we're just seen to kind of borrowing or utilizing superficially, like another metaphoric comparison, and not actually showing a true acknowledgement or understanding of it, then we're not really acknowledging what's happening in reality, or a kind of deeper understanding. So I think it speaks to that a bit as well.
What does that imply, that if we do mention the original violence, then that metaphor is then permissible, as it were? Is that you think that's what she's saying?
I wanted to question Carol more on this, because every time I think about it, I feel like I don't quite get to it. I'd love to kind of really question her on that a little bit more, because I know she has explained it, and I know she doesn't really advocate for direct comparisons, like using a direct comparison of, say, rape, for example. Should I say content warning without a rape? For the R word, for, you know, other animals and for women, not because of it not being factually correct or anything like that, but I think from what I understood, from what I heard her say, I think maybe on the show actually, is that it perhaps doesn't do justice to either of those individuals, because it's not, you're not properly acknowledging the original violence that happens to the human woman, but also that part of the experience of the cow is perhaps only a part of her whole experience of what she's of her oppression and exploitation. I think that's the way I understood it, but I'd love to get more out of Carol on that bit.
We'll have the chance to hear from Carol. We have a video about
Yeah,
reference later on.
well, I can drop this out now and play it now if you want me to.
Yeah, that would be good actually.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
This is a great
Okay.
clip from Carol.
Hey, Wendy, you're getting so politically incorrect. You'll have to join the royal family soon. You know, other parasites are available. Okay, I'll drop this out. Right. Okay.
Key aspects of intersectionality is that before you get it, you don't see it anywhere. And once you get it, you see it everywhere. So what's the transition? What's the point that creates this new way of seeing intersections? It could be as simple as looking at a Carl's Jr. ad that says, breasts so big we can't show them on television. And then they've blocked out the breasts of a chicken. So they're using the fragmentation of women and the sexualization of women's breasts to sell dead, fragmented chickens' parts. If you look at it without the insight of intersectionality, you look and think, well, that's kind of disgusting, or isn't that silly? But when you look at it from the perspective of intersectionality, you see that they're using misogyny to sell speciesism. That speciesism, this attitude of animals are here for us, always needs to be bolstered by other forces. Intersectionality means that in a dominant culture, those who are not dominant for reasons of gender identity, sex, race, class, or species find themselves categorized together.
Yeah, I think there she makes it quite clear, because in Carol's work, she talks a lot about the animalization of women and the sexual feminization of other animals. And I think there she's really given a great example of that with this, the breasts and the chickens, and it really kind of, it's used a lot. And if anyone hasn't read The Sexual Politics of Meat or Pornography of, yeah, that she shows some just shocking examples of how this is just ubiquitous in society for advertising, especially, well, I think from all over the world, and especially I think a lot of them are from perhaps North America and things like that, just for kind of diners, burger joints, and things like that, where these adverts are just totally animalizing and feminizing women and other animals. Just really shocking.
Yeah, it seems that North America in particular have going a lot for it, don't they? I remember one of the most shocking things is the turkey hooker. I remember that, that. So it's just a device to stick in the body of a turkey to place into the oven, but they advertised it with a turkey dressed up as a sex worker. Typical kind of male mind stuff.
And she talks a lot about fragmentation as well, that fragmentation of female bodies in kind of adverts where you might just see the torso of a woman. You don't, because it's that taking away, that dehumanization of the woman, taking away from the whole person. You just see fragments, and the same with other animals and their body parts. It's just the breasts, the legs, it's those kind of things. And it's that fragmentation to de-individualize those people. And I think, Roger, you gave an example of that. earlier.
Yeah. I was quite shocked by it because, well, when I kind of learned this idea of fragmentation of female body parts, I realized that when you used to go down to get your lunch, this was in one of the Victorian prisons that I was in. You used to go past other people's cells and you kind of glanced in, and some of the guys used to cover all the walls with pornographic pictures. And when they got too many, they started then, as it were, covering over the bits of the women on the walls that they didn't want to see. So you ended up with just loads and loads of body parts, the bits that they want to see. So they might put a picture over a woman's head, for example, unless that involved oral sex, obviously. So you had that fragmentation going on right there in one kind of example, just because the guy ran out of space and he said, okay, well, we don't need that bit of the woman, and so we'll cover it over. Shocking stuff.
And just to mention that in Carol Adams' books, it becomes very clear how one oppression is used to reinforce another oppression.
What do you think of this from Bernie?
Just return of suffering.
I don't agree. The truth is that I don't agree, because we have the sexualization of other animals. We do that to them in order to exploit them and to oppress them. So I don't think that this is disrespectful. That I think that this is realistic. And if you go through the pornography of meat, you can see actual pornography involving other animals, the way their bodies are depicted.
I suppose one interesting question is why the focus is on flesh, isn't it? I suppose, which is an interesting one. I mean, you've got the sexual politics of meat and the pornography of meat, rather than products derived from other animals. Of course, that doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, I suppose, but.
Not a catchy title.
No. You can imagine a publisher going, "Yeah, right, yeah. Can't we just say meat?"
Yeah, I would argue it's also problematic from the things that I've seen in the movement when perhaps some folks, and maybe it's just controversial to say this because some people may say it's empowering to women, but I would err on the side of that it's degrading and kind of it's some way copying these tactics from industry, promoting like female body parts as consumable. Is when in the movement when we start to kind of offer a mirror to that, but when we promote veganism. So when there are t-shirts, like I commented on Instagram post the other day in which there was a t-shirt saying "Eat pussy, not animals," and for the reasons that I think it's problematic, that it's promotes this idea of consumable women's body parts. And it's trivializing the issue of veganism as well. As a serious justice issue. And obviously we've seen, for example, Roger, you've done numerous takes on this, but PETA using this sensationalist kind of misogynist tactic in their campaigns to try sell veganism as sexy, at the detriment of degrading women, which is problematic on so many levels.
Yeah, well, Ingrid Newkirk kind of latches in onto that mainstream value, which is interesting. We're going to talk about the mainstream, I think, a little later, if I've got the right clip, but we'll come back to that. But the mainstream value of sex sells. In fact, Newkirk has often said that PETA doesn't use sexism, it uses sex, which, fine line, but it really uses, that because they try and get around it by saying, well, we encourage men to strip off as well, but they don't do it as often as they encourage women. And also there's a certain type of a woman that they prefer, obviously the celebrity ones, but, also, young, thin, white usually. So there is that, so, yeah. Okay.
It's difficult because some women will say, well, I chose to do it and I feel empowered and it's my body. I will use it as I choose. And I suppose, you know, there is that, and you don't want to dictate someone else's experience, but I suppose it's very difficult when that whole strategy is born out of in a patriarchal society that says women's bodies are objects and women's bodies are there for male pleasure. I know we're being very stereotypical here in terms of sexuality, but that kind of patriarchal concept,
gaze,
that male gaze, yes, and that's what obviously they're playing into, and so it's very difficult. And yeah, I think there are a lot of grey areas there, but as Tom said as well, whether it kind of belittles the movement as well, because we wouldn't do that for any other social justice movement. So is it effective?
I mean, that argument though about, you know, as it were, we're volunteers is really quite a difficult one. I mean, it goes back. I mean, I remember debates about this, you know, about remember the Page 3 girls, you know, the kind of Samantha Fox type person, you know, all the way back to the 1970s, and they would appear on the TV with debates with feminists saying, well, you know, I'm a volunteer and I'm becoming rich because of it. And the feminist response was, well, you know, you think that's what you want to do, but it's actually society telling you. So it's actually quite a difficult argument on both sides of it, because there's no such thing as free will. At the same time, we don't want to suggest that people are just a complete slave to their culture either. So there you go.
It's a difficult one.
Indeed. Should I move on?
Yep.
Right.
So this is from Patrice Jones, and the quote reads, "When we affirm that we are our bodies, but deny that our bodies are property, we undermine one of the most destructive ideas in history, that people are something other than animals." So Patrice is, she does lots of things. She's a writer, a speaker, an activist. She educates people on different social injustices. She has an intersectional perspective, advocates for ecofeminism, and she's the founder of Vine Sanctuary in I can't remember where that is actually, but the Vine actually, which I didn't know, which I found out today, it stands for something. Can you remember that, anyone? I've just
vegan is the next evolution.
That's right. Veganism is the next evolution.
And I believe
it's the next evolution.
I didn't know that.
US.
Yeah, no, I hadn't realized that, but it stands for that. Veganism is the next evolution. And if anyone hasn't checked out Patrice's talks, they are incredible. Like what I love about Patrice is the talks are, she's a very animated, very passionate speaker, but the way she manages to kind of speak about very complex topics, but in a very digestible way, and in a very kind of conversational way, and gives great examples. And I've had some real light bulb moments watching and listening to some of Patrice's work, things that I've read about and before, but something just clicks with her. I really relate to her a lot. So
well, we've got an interesting question here from Elliot. It's in two parts. So I'm currently rather late to this live stream, and I come across a quote. "It involves the commitment to work non-violently for change. Would you argue that somebody who works violently for change," this is the last bit of it, goes against vegan values then? It's an interesting one, that.
I think we should define what constitutes violence, because here we have the question, is it violence when it's not against other people, when it's against objects? There is a debate on that.
It's a complicated debate, isn't it? Because violence is one of those words that is actually difficult to define. But you know, if a burglary occurred in your house, as it were, you do feel violated. And no, that's not quite the same as violence, is it? But it is again another one of these kind of nuanced ideas. And of course, you've got these ideas about you know, being violent in order to bring about a non-violent world. And of course, someone like Francione would say, well, obviously, the history of the human race has been violence. So if violence brought about peace, then we would have peace long ago. So there is that problem. But the kind of just war kind of thing, going to war to bring about peace, all of those things come into that kind of debate. But it is quite complicated, I think.
But I personally don't believe that anyone in the movement, past and present, was violent. I don't see the direct actions as violent, personally, in the sense that they didn't aim to hurt other humans.
Well, some did. I mean, that's why there was a bit of a split, because there was the Justice Department, the Hunt Retribution Squad, and the animal, what's that, militia, animal rights militia. They all declared that they would use violence. So I remember I wrote an article years ago now saying that the militia was really specious, because they were basically saying that if I think if Barry Horn died on his hunger strike, they would kill 10 vivisectors. And I said, well, why do you have to wait for a human being to die before you kill 10 vivisectors? Because they're killing others all the time. And that's another matter. We do have a clip from Patrice.
Yes,
Do you want?
And actually, yeah, just because actually there's a message or comment rather from Bernie in the group, which ties in quite well with this. So we could maybe bring that up as well afterwards or before.
This one?
This one. Yes.
Okay.
And this ties in well with this clip, if it's that clip.
If it's the right one, yeah, I might. Yeah, I got so confused setting all this up that I might not have the right one. If it's not the right one, tell me and I can quickly get it. Okay, so
I probably won't. Won't remember. No, I will. I'll know which one it is.
Adorable and charming people that you would ever meet.
No, that's not the one.
All right. Okay. Is that the duck one? Is that the duck
That's
one?
the duck one. Yeah, that's the duck one.
I picked the wrong one. Okay, let me. Are we going for the just give me a clue. Are we going for the mainstream one or the other one?
The mainstream.
Yes, the mainstream. From
All right. Okay. Hang on a second. Then I'll find that in a second now.
The title of the talk is "Commonalities of Oppression." For anyone who wants to watch it on YouTube, the full.
Hello.
Yeah, that's it. Gabby, you keep filling in for me. I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
Yeah, there's some great talks on there, that commonality, can't even say it, commonalities of oppression, and there's some other ones talking about what's wrong with what's wrong with animal rights. And there's a few talks from the Animal Rights Conference in Luxembourg. That one that just came up, that was from a different one. And there's a brilliant story at the end of that, which I hope we get time for.
Yeah, Patrice Jones' talk at Luxembourg you just mentioned, she completely confuses legal rights and moral rights.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. Anyway, I found the clip. Do you want to play it now that I've rescued myself?
Yeah, before you play the clip, I want to mention Patrice's books, Aftershock and The Oxen at the Intersection, for anyone who wants to look them up.
Actually, John was just mentioning that actually in the talk, asking about Aftershock. Yeah, so that's Patrice's.
This is a real good advert for the female writers of the movement, isn't it? Brilliant. Okay, are you ready to go?
Yes, please.
Ecofeminist scholars, feminist scholars, including both white ecofeminist scholars and ecofeminists.
Oh no, this is the wrong one, isn't it?
Wrong one.
Oh no!
It is a good one though. It is a good one.
Yeah. Well, oh blimey. Okay.
I know. I gave Roger so many clips, and then we just decided at the end. But obviously,
yeah, I'm completely.
It'll be the last one. That's what everyone's chatting away in the comments anyway. They probably don't need us anymore. They're having a good debate about violence here. Oh, Vegemite Codbod, thank you. This is Brian. Have you met Brian before? He's getting hungry now, so he starts to get a little bit lively.
If this is not right now, I'm going to retire.
You heard that, everyone.
We need to do these things for several reasons. One, numbers.
Shit, that's the wrong one as well.
It's the last one.
I know.
That's a good one as well, though.
Yeah,
That is a really good one as
they're all
well.
good. Yeah, we ended
really
up like deciding between about 12 clips, and I had them all written down, and I couldn't go wrong, and obviously I could. So let me see.
Yeah, we had a very hard time this time.
I found.
Vegan Gaze says it's chaos. Oh,
Yeah.
that's just normal Vegan Gaze. This is seamless.
You see, if women were in
Natasha
charge,
says,
it would
Roger,
all
you're
go
terrible at
smoothly.
tech.
Right. I found it now, people. Here it is.
It could be a long evening.
There's a lot of people in the world, like 7 billion now, and a really tiny number of them are white middle-class Americans.
No, I'm sorry, that's not the right one either. Bloody hell! What? I know this clip. I'll tell you what producer Jones said. Wow, she said that the mainstream is not the majority, and she was tapping into this idea that when you hear the word mainstream, it implies the majority of people. She was saying that the mainstream is not the majority. That's when she puts her arms out in case anybody actually goes and watch the clip. And she says, you know, it's all the people outside of the mainstream who are the majority. So if we focus our attention here, this is me doing the thing precisely, then we're missing out all these, you know, the actual majority of people. And so it really makes a very important point about the idea that, you know, a lot of people kind of celebrate the idea that veganism is moving into the mainstream. Well, she's kind of suggesting, well, that might actually miss the point. And that's not necessarily a great thing to do in the first place.
Yeah, what actual clip was that then, the last one, Roger? Because there weren't that many.
No, I don't know.
It was one of those.
Yeah, I'm completely
it probably was that one.
I think it was the last one.
I think it was that one. It just was probably a little bit before the main bit because there weren't that many. There was only 3 from that book.
All right. Well, I'm not getting it again. You can forget it.
Oh, everyone to see Patrice if they haven't. Anyway, go check out Patrice's talks because they're brilliant. But yeah, that's it's a really good point that she talks about the majority are not in the mainstream. The majority are out there, basically, and the marginalized groups. Where's Tom gone? Marginalized groups are more likely. Are more likely to get it and to empathize with what we have to say as well because of their understanding of oppression from their own points of view. So she made some really good points about that. And she also talks about how oppressions compound each other. It's not just a matter of them intersecting. It's one oppression compounds another, and you just get that layering with that as well. So,
well, I mean, we are giving chaos a bad name here where it's going.
And we seem to have lost a member of the team.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And this is not a feminist strategy, by the way, just to get rid of the men folk on the team. It's like,
no, Tom's going. I'm not associated with these people. I'm going. Well, he ain't come back into the waiting room. So should we proceed without him, or do we wait? Or
no, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't need Tom, do we?
Oh, okay, Tom, we do.
Tom has a technical problem. His computer just turned off, so he'll be with us shortly.
Something, yeah.
Right. Okay.
AFCO. So this is from AFCO, who is she is an independent thinker and a digital content creator, and she's the author of Afroism and co-author of Racism as Zoological Witchcraft with her sister Silko. And this quote reads, "Veganism isn't just about kicking a meat-eating habit and getting some veggies into your diet. It's a powerful rejection of a racist food system and a racist cannibalistic politics that characterizes animals and non-white people as disposable and consumable."
Read with
passion. It's quite powerful.
Read with passion.
I felt that one.
Yeah.
I think really interesting ideas from Af and
Let him back. Hey.
I'll go on then. Hey, Tom.
Hey, folks.
This has been our smoothest running show yet, hasn't it? Amazing.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just.
Got the blue screen and then everything went dark. So
What I'll do is I'll edit out all my mistakes and then publish the 15 minutes that are left.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So yeah, really interesting ideas from Afan Silko about they talk a lot about kind of, again, animalization, going back to that or they talk actually not about intersectionality, they talk more about multidimensional oppressions, because they believe that actually intersectional leaves gaps, and it doesn't kind of account for how they kind of interweave and that multidimensional effect. So those books are really great. I think it's looking at veganism from a very different point of view, and tying it in with racism. And here again, we could put in this quote, animals, women. We could put any marginalized group into that quote, and it would still fit there, I believe, because it talks about, you know, all those intersections again. I think that's something that's kind of an overarching kind of perspective of the feminist thinkers and writers, is that kind of zooming out and seeing the big picture, the interconnection, the layering, the compounding of oppressions. I think that seems like quite a common kind of theme in the women thinkers.
Did anybody think that the first sentence is a bit problematic?
Yeah, it does reduce it to the meat eating.
Yeah, I thought that when I first saw it, because I was thinking, because funny enough, we've got a clip from Silko where she's saying that veganism is not a diet, and yet, I mean, this is not saying veganism is a diet, but it's also kind of reducing it just to flesh, isn't it? Which is a bit weird, I suppose. So,
I guess could it be argued that she's responding to the mainstream perception of what veganism is?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, because I think that a lot of people, as soon as you mention vegan, it's like, oh, meat, you don't eat meat, and then what else don't you eat, or what do you eat? Most people say, what do you eat? But maybe that responds to that common perspective.
And I think then there's a lot of comments about violence and non-violence. We ought to do a show on it, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So do you want me to show the Silko one now, or move on to the what do you want to do, team?
I think we do the Silko now,
and then we can play her clip, perhaps.
Well, that's what I mean. We we've got a quote. Oh,
we've got a quote and a clip.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm completely out of order here now. I've completely lost it, folks. Completely lost
I
it.
just lost it. You've seen it. You're witnesses.
I'm having a senior moment today.
Has that been ages to yourself?
Yeah, ages to yourself,
yeah.
So, Tom, over to you.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yeah, before you compute.
We've got to crack the whip on these men folk in this team, Manella. Come on.
So Silko says we have to wrap our heads around the modes of thinking that were designed precisely to ensure certain humans, animals, and other non-human life remain outside our moral and social communities. This is not a precious academic intellectual activity. This is absolutely necessary for real change.
I love this quote because it makes so clear that anyone belonging in a social justice movement should bear this in mind. It's not an intellectual academic thing. It's something that we should think of every day and act accordingly, and recognize the oppression of others and our privilege, and see what we can do with this. One thing that both Sil and Afko talk about a lot in racism as zoological witchcraft is this idea of the other, and how when we put that label to the other, is easier to exploit them and oppress them. And I think this is something it can be said for all minorities, for all minority groups, and it's a theme that we've seen in all these quotes, but by women.
Yeah, definitely. They kind of all sort of, again, they intersect with each other, they tie in, they reinforce each other, don't they? These thinkers, because actually this relates back to something that Patrice Jones was saying in one of the talks as well, about how people think of intersectionality as just an idea and a concept, but actually it was created as a tool, as a way of looking at things in order to solve a particular problem. And of course, it came from Kimberly Crenshaw's legal work to find a mode of how to sort of protect Black women who didn't have a call to sexism, because white women weren't experiencing this particular oppression, and they didn't have the call to racism because the Black men weren't experiencing that particular oppression. So there was a gap there. So it was actually, she was finding something. It was a tool to help kind of plug that gap. It wasn't just a concept, an idea to sort of, to think about. It was, how do we solve a problem? And that's what Patrice Jones was really trying to get over in one of the talks, is like, think of this as a way to look at things in order to solve the problems, not just an idea and a concept. And also one thing, because we're not going to play this clip, but there is a clip that I found really powerful, and that Patrice talks about, I know we've moved on to Alf and Sil, but just while we're on Patrice, is that she talks about intersectionality as people now use it as an adjective for like to describe, and it's almost become an identity. Are you an intersectional? It's like a noun or an adjective. And she says, and this is problematic. It's not to be used like that. It's a strategy or a process or a project can be intersectional, or can be looked at in an intersectional way, but you can't just be an intersectional.
Toolbox, isn't it? Described as a toolbox.
Yeah, it's a toolbox and a way of looking at things to solve problems, and that it shouldn't be thrown around as an adjective, a noun, or as an insult, which it often is in the movement now.
Do you think that this quote kind of reminds you of the one thing that we addressed? I'm a bit conscious of the time actually, but the one thing we addressed last week when we were looking at the critique of Reagan and the right space approach, because doesn't it imply the circle and the inside and the outside of?
Yes,
remain outside our moral and social communities. It kind of reminded me of kind of drawing those circles in terms of identify who's in and who's out, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, well, we're 6 minutes over, really. So should we, I think, is the next one Danae, I think. So we could either go on to Danae's slide or play the Silco, but that's 2 minutes long, that, though. So what do you think?
Before we do that, I just want to mention for anyone who doesn't like reading that both books by Silco and Afko are also available in audio form.
Okay. Well, all of them?
Yes, both racism, zoological witchcraft, and Afroism.
Excellent. That's good.
Yeah, I listened to one on audiobook, and it's really great, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's anybody out there who doesn't like reading or listening, you're screwed still. So there you go. So what we're going to do, folks? Do we move on with the slide, or do we move on to the Sil clip?
What do you think, Nella? Should we play Sil, or I feel like we won't do justice to Joan if we just rush her.
Let's play Sil.
Okay. So we won't be showing Joan at all then. That's not doing justice as well. There you go. Right.
Let's do both then. I don't mind staying longer if everyone else doesn't want to stay.
My name is Silco. I'm affiliated with the activist group called Afroism. So one of the biggest issues that we have with veganism is that people are well aware, of course, that non-human animals suffer, that non-human animals have social connections, that non-human animals, have sophisticated cognitive capacities, and this still doesn't move most people to change anything about how they see food or how they see entertainment. One of the things that Af and I are concerned with is this question: how do you get people to care about non-human animals, given you can give them all the facts and they still don't seem to care? So we think there's actually something wrong with the framing of the issue and not necessarily something wrong with people. We think people are actually thinking completely rationally. So in fact, we're the weird ones. So vegans are the weird ones. So we have this big task. How do you get people to abandon or question this normative system, which uses animals in a specific way? And we think race is the way to do it. My goal was actually to bring to the forefront that this is a movement that's supposed to be about animals. I'm hoping to bring that issue up front, that it's important that we have benefits from a vegan diet, but we don't want to turn it into this thing about diet or a thing that's just about food, especially just you saying the word food constantly in the context of a vegan space is just sort of ironic, because we're trying to argue against the idea that non-human animals are food. And so it's a misnomer to even use these two words in the same space. So what we're trying to do is kind of get rid of this idea that people of color are appropriating a movement because we're just so as if we're so blind and so self-involved that we can only be vegan because we're getting some benefit out of it. I don't want that narrative. It would be just as weird. It would be weird, for instance, if we're at a feminist thing and everyone keeps talking about how feminism benefits men, and then you never mention anything about women. And it's true, feminism benefits men and men should definitely be involved and blah, blah, blah. But it would be very weird if we completely left out the group that this movement was created for. And so I'm hoping that, that my role in this event brought out that issue a little bit.
That's interesting. She talks about us being weird. There used to be a very kind of well-known book in the movement. It was called trigger warning, I suppose, but it was called Vegan Freak. And there's also a radio show called Vegan Freak Radio Show. And it was Bob Torres and can't remember the other person, but another Torres. And so that was then a critique for being ableist, but I mean, what they meant was that we're kind of freaks in a sociological sense, in the sense that we're breaking all the sociological rules about things, because we are swimming against the tide and everything. So we place ourselves on the outside of the mainstream in that sense, in terms of values. So she was kind of saying that, which was quite interesting.
I always say, if everyone else is normal, I don't want to be. I'm quite happy being weird.
All right, I'll put this back up. Anyone else got a last comment about Sil or Af before we move on?
I think those books really do offer a very different view from anything else that when I read those, I remember thinking this is a very different perspective, a very different filter to look through. And I think that's really interesting to do that sometimes, because I think we kind of get stuck in our own little bubble of our own thoughts and beliefs, and we tend to kind of stick within that and not look beyond that. But I think sometimes really open up your mind to different views, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with everything, but I think just to have that open mind is very important to learning and progressing and evolving as individuals and as a movement as well. I think if we just close down and go, no, this is my belief system, this is what I know, and that's it, then I think we're doomed. I think we have to open up and hear different voices, hear different opinions and perspectives from a different experience, because we can only see from our own standpoint. I think feminists talk about this, having that standpoint. We can only see from our own standpoint, but every other person's got a different standpoint, and we need to sometimes embrace that a little bit. So I really recommend reading those.
Me too.
Okay, I'm trying to move on here. There, this is the last one, folks.
Is it my turn to read this one, Tom?
Who gets to read the last one?
So this is from Joe. I always say Joe. Is it Joan Denea or Denea? Denea. I never know which one to say. Denea. Unable to gainsay speciesism's lies, other animals suffer from human abuse and linguistic power. Considered in relation to the plight of non-human beings, Adrienne Rich's, sorry, I didn't know if that's Rich's or Rich. Feminist words express a terrible absolute. This is the oppressor's language. And
Yeah,
Joan Danae has a book that everyone's trying to get hold of. Tom has the book. Roger used to have the book, and someone borrowed it and never gave it back to him.
Yeah, somebody stole it.
I think there were
Animal
like,
equality.
yeah, there were like 2 copies left in the UK, and I think I got one of them. I think this was a few weeks ago. So I'm sorry, everyone.
You should have bought both and held them to ransom.
Yeah, you could have sold it for like thousands on Amazon. No, don't do that. I'm just joking.
I like this quote because it refers to the fact that language is used to oppress, and this is an idea Carol has written about. And language is used to oppress both women and other animals.
Yeah, definitely. And again, we're seeing that overlap and that intersection of oppressions, again, women and you know, misogyny and speciesism through language. And I think, yeah, and Carol really uses that in her work as well. I think I think our language is very powerful. I think often in the movement there's like a reluctance and resistance to change language, and it's like, oh, don't be the vegan police. Let's, you know, we don't want to be so different in our language that people don't know what we're talking about. But I think we have to bear in mind that through our language we are being political, and we can either reinforce the kind of paradigms, the cultural paradigms that already exist, or we can challenge them. And I think we have to just be more political in our language and challenge those paradigms rather than just reinforce them all the time.
You know, I see some of the YouTubers talking about, oh, language police and blah blah blah, but that's so short-sighted. One of the main things we do is use language and critique language, and to ripen people up to a new form of language. I mean, language is completely central to what we do, on the grounds that, as I've said before, social movements are claims makers in society. We identify an issue, a problem, we identify it as a problem, and then we make claims about it. And so language is absolutely crucial to everything we do. And so therefore, in terms of our communication skills, which again relies on language, we should be very, very careful about what we're about. And even if, you know, I mean, obviously there's controversial words that we've talked about, and they've been talked about in the movement of late. It's one thing to think about, do I think that that's true? You know, all these words, do you think that's accurate? But then you've got a second movement question, which is it a good idea to say that? You know, and like in terms of being the spokespersons or the kind of representative of a movement, we have to really think carefully about what we're going to say and the way we're going to do it, because the other side, and also often the public, they're just waiting to kind of find a little chink in the argument, or find something that they can dislike in order to kind of, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing. So the less times we allow people to do that, the better. So it seems to me to be pretty obvious that that's what you should do. You know, be very careful about your language.
I was just going to say that there is a website, I think it's called Anti-Speciesist Action, and they've done a blog post, or blog post, almost like an index actually, with offerings of different language that we can use to promote animal rights. And it's inspired. They've kind of paid tribute to the work of Joan Danae in their in the writing of this, and how she's encouraged them through her writing to think more about language. So yeah, truly another avant-garde. And I think someone said in the comments,
I think it was Deb.
Yeah, Deb. Joan was ahead of her time in her writings. Yeah, I think that's entirely right, Deb.
There's also Unlearning Speciesist Language, Jeremy's group, and yes. I think Jeremy just did a dictionary or something, didn't he, or something like that?
Yeah, I think is that on his website, veganinteractions.com. There's the whole dictionary of.
Okay, yeah,
I believe it's on there, but I think it's also shared in the group as well, in unlearning speciesist language in that group on Facebook. I think he did post it in there. I think it's on his website as well.
I'd love to see a video conversation of Joan and Jeremy having a chat. I think that would be great.
What objection to each other's language, you mean?
If I may, as an explanation, I would like to read one of Carol's quotes that we didn't use because it had so many to choose from. And she says, but just as the generic he erases female presence, the generic it erases the living, breathing nature of the animals and reifies their object status. So language is that powerful. And therefore should be used carefully.
It certainly should. Yeah. I certainly agree with that. Right.
I was wondering, I know we're really over time, but do you think to play us out, we could share the duck story? Or is it really too late?
The duck story is amazing.
Yeah. The duck story is amazing. I'd love for everyone to see this.
Yeah, you're so nasty to me. I just removed it from the thing. I've got to bring it back in
now.
I thought there's no way they're going to force me to show that now. And what do you go and do? I don't know.
Who votes for the duck story?
Yeah. If I can remember which one it is. Oh, there it is, I think.
The duck story is mentioned in several of her producers' talks. Is that correct?
Yeah, Sam wants the duck story. Yes, so this is in one of the talks. I can't remember which one it was now because there's so many. Yeah. This is a great talk, and this comes quite to the end. But I think it does, again, it's a really great example of, and Natasha wants the duck story as well, so you're outvoted, Roger. It's a great example of how our modes of thinking, our modes of thinking and the gender construction and the construction of sexuality and all these kind of paradigms that we create and that we construct in our society do affect other animals as well, and this is a really great example of that. I find it a real example of intersectionality here. Enjoy.
Right, ducks. Here comes the duck story.
Sanctuary. We're now like 500 animals and counting, and all different species. But at first, we were just a chicken sanctuary surrounded by poultry farms. And then at some point, we took in a group of ducks rescued from a foie gras factory. And they turned out to be like the most adorable and charming people that you would ever meet. How many people have ever met ducks? Right? I mean, they're so social. They're so interested in everything. And every day is a new day. And water is so great. I mean, you know, who can live with ducks and not just be so happy, right? And so we were just delighted with these ducks. We loved the way that they were so kind to each other. We loved the way that they were kind to the chickens. And these were big ducks who were bigger than a lot of the little chickens. Some of them even adopted some of the injured chickens. The thing is, so there were 8 ducks, and when they moved in, we didn't have enough room to put them in either one of our coops, right? And so we spent a little time with them. We tried to figure out who was friends with who. And then we put, 4 of them went into one of the coops and 4 went into the other coops. One day I come out and to, I don't know, do some kind of chore, and 2 of them are fighting with each other. And I was really upset because the ducks. And so I was like, no, this is a sanctuary. Even the fighting roosters don't fight here. You cannot fight here. What is this? So I tried to figure out like who was the aggressor and who was the victim. And I took the victim and I took him over to the other coop where he would be safe, right? went about my business. I don't know what I was doing, putting down straw, refilling water bowls, whatever. Maybe 45 minutes, an hour went by. I turn around and there's the one that I put in the other coop, trying desperately to get over this one fence, talking to the one who'd been attacking him. You don't know, because this was amazing, because what he had to do to actually get from one to the other was he had to walk through the yard, he had to climb a 6-foot fence, he had to walk through the woods, to make a sharp left turn, walk up the driveway, make another sharp left turn, and then start climbing this last little half fence, which is where I had found him. So I was like, whoa, I made a mistake. You must be friends. You're having some kind of argument. All right, so I picked him up and I helped him over the fence, and they were like, yes, we're really not. Go about my business. Come back out an hour later to check the waters or whatever, and they're fighting again. So I separate them. Sure enough, hour later, he had walked through the path, climbed the 6-foot fence, walked through the woods, made the sharp left turn, walked up the driveway, and this time he was like almost over that last fence. 3 times this happened before I literally hit my head with my hand. That wasn't fighting, it was sex. They were boyfriends. So we called them Jean-Paul and Jean-Claude, and they were boyfriends for life. They hung out together every day. They went to sleep together in the coop every night. I'm not saying they were monogamous, because ducks tend not to be. But here's the deal. I was this lesbian feminist who had read this book called Biological Exuberance, which is like this doorstopper of a book that tells us the hundreds of different animals, including ducks, who engage in same-sex sex, pair bonding, courtship, displays of affection, and even child rearing. I knew that. And yet, the presumption of animal heterosexuality was so strong that I almost broke up that couple. I did break up that couple. They just refused to be broken up.
Oh, I love that so much.
Amazing story.
I
It's
love it.
interesting.
I just
Isn't it a kind of a lesbian imposing heterosexual norms? That's
yeah. Oh, Sam, this is Pickle. This is Brian's sister. This is Pickle. She hasn't been on the show before. This is her debut. Hey, Pickle. Oh, I'm glad you played that story. Thank you for doing that. I love that.
No worries. So, are we done? I
feel like carrying on now. I'm well into it now.
I'll wait to be told what to do.
The power.
I think we can thank everyone for joining us today. And just say goodbye.
The McGovern family is taking over, yeah.
They are on. They're getting a taste. They just want a little taste of
that guy who co-founded that group in the 70s says hi, Pickle.
Oh, Ronnie Lee says hi, Pickle.
And so does Tom Reagan's brother.
Oh, hi, Terry says hi as well, but she's got a little tongue sticking out, ready to wash me. There she goes.
You're very kind, Sam, because there wasn't a hitch at all today.
No,
Smooth as
It went really smooth.
It was a show in spite of the tech issues.
Yes, indeed.
Poor Tom even got dropped out. Oh no, thank you everyone. Thanks for all your comments. There's been some brilliant comments. Shame we couldn't keep up with the chat about the violence. I'll have to go back and read those as well.
and we'll probably have to do a session about violence, because it seems to be an interesting topic.
Yeah, we can get that guy who co-founded the ALF to be on the show for that.
Oh,
for
yes.
That. Yeah.
Definitely.
I know we've got to finish. Actually, Ronnie did mention. Can we, if we just maybe finish with? He mentioned another activist who sadly died, Sue Smith, I believe. I don't know. It's just a little bit further up. And he says something about she was an activist. She never got caught, but she was a very prominent activist, and sadly she died.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that one there.
Yeah, and there was one before that he was just talking about her activism. Yeah, that's the one. One of the founders of the Band of Mercy, which was not Ronnie's pop band. It was actually the kind of the group that they formed before ALF became into being. It was the first name.
Did you just say pop band?
Pop band, yeah. So it's not his pop band.
Yeah, it
sounds like it could be, couldn't it?
It was a punk band. It wasn't a pop band.
Wasn't even that though, was it? Band of Mercy.
No,
that's what I'm saying. It wasn't a pop band.
Okay, all right.
But you can't be nasty to me today. I keep telling you this, right? It's International
I'm
Women's
never
Day.
nasty to anybody. Everybody knows that. Don't they, Tom? Oh yeah. Well,
Don't stick up for him, Tom. Don't stick up for him.
Ronnie's renamed it Grand Pop Band. So right. Well, I'm knackered after all that tech work, so I think we better go, folks. So
You're fired after all that tech work.
Oh, there'll be a completely different setup next week, folks.
Your computers must be white hot.
I'll be in the chat going, "Let me in, let me in."
So, are we going? We are going.
I'm just waiting to be told what to do.
Oh, okay. No, we're going to go then.
Oh, we're going to go. Right.
Yeah,
Goodbye then,
okay,
folks.
thanks everyone.
Bye,
See you next time.
Bye.
Well, Andy.
Myself.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that as well.
Yeah.
So this is live now, folks. So
Yeah, sorry I'm a little bit late, an hour and a half or so. I knew I was never going to get back for 7, but I certainly thought I'd be back for 8. Yeah, apologize.
love these tars. The Animal Rights Show, yes, can't be beaten. I'd say. So Andy, yeah. So I played your announcement at the very beginning of this, so everybody's heard that. So have you? Because I was asking technical questions, wasn't I? Yeah. So can you just go through that maybe for people? Because Deb.
So just for example, Facebook is the easiest way to potentially do this at the moment. But if you're not on Facebook, it's not a problem. But I'll just go through the Facebook options first, purely because they're the easiest. So if you went live on your own personal profile, Joe Blogs goes live at the march, just literally on your live, tag the National Animal Rights March so that we get a notification to say Joe Blogs has gone live, or Joe Blogs tagged you in a video, for example, tagged you in a live video. So then
what if your name's not Joe Blogs though, Andy?
Oh, whoever. But if you're already a member of the National Animal Rights March group on Facebook, you can actually, and I think up to 12 at once can go live. So you can actually go live as the group. So you don't, I mean, if you want to remain anonymous for whatever reason and just point the camera at the crowd, you can go live as the group. I think up to 12 people at once can go live as the group. And those videos will automatically then save when finished like a live would, but to the group as opposed to your own personal wall. So that's actually the best way of doing it, because not only will we be automatically notified because it's our group, but also they're all automatically saved to the group. Because a big part of that isn't just to include people whilst the march is going on, but all of this stuff afterwards that usually people that have done things, said things, been part of things, they all get forgotten. I mean, just look at, we was discussing it not too long ago, Wendy's speech from the memorial back in June. Is it on the internet yet, is it? Because I haven't seen it. Whereas this is instant. Everybody that says something or is part of something, we don't have to wait 4 months for someone to get round to editing it, to put it online. It's online. So we're basically... Yeah, it's a bit, imagine it like a sports studio, I suppose, on a Saturday daytime where everything is going on all around the country, although there's specifically mostly in London, and we're just kind of covering that. And anyone that wants to come on and join us and have a chat or anything else.
It'll be quite good, won't it? We're just getting news from Marble Arch.
But yeah, that kind of thing, you know, basically. And obviously all the people like Deb, for example, and including yourself, I mean, other than your promo video before a couple of days ago, that would have been like your involvement over, right? Whereas now you can be an inaugural part of the day, so can plenty of other people.
I'm a speaker now, folks.
Andy, what I'm saying. So like all of these things can quickly change very quickly, and I just, because it was obviously a bit disappointing that I couldn't go, it was the best way of trying to do something. But actually, the more that I think about it, and the more you kind of look at how many potential ideas there are now, this could be a big blessing in disguise. And it means that a march that was very sort of secular in terms of the people that attended were the only people that were going to be involved. Now, anyone can be, essentially, no matter where you are in the world. Even if you want to get involved just before the end, the time difference-wise should be morning and evening. Somewhere, you should be all right, even if it's only for half an hour or an hour or so. Yeah, and obviously, so plus it'll all be online afterwards.
Global, hasn't it? So when you say tag the National Animal Rights March, is that at?
Yeah, at the National Animal Rights March. Yes, that's right.
What is that read out, written out in full, or just?
Yeah, the National Animal Rights. I think it's. I don't know if it's UK or 2023. Let me just double check whilst we're on here. But
what about capitals? Does that matter? Or?
That doesn't make any difference. If you already follow the page, as soon as you type at Nash or National, it'll come up anyway.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. And on YouTube, it's exactly the same tag. But like I said, so if you wanted to do it on, for example, TikTok, we'll be monitoring that.
Is it UK though? You were saying you're looking to say what is UK, or does it say 2023 or what?
National Animal Rights March UK.
Okay.
On Twitter, it's
I'm making a banner just so we can.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah,
is that what it should look like there?
Yeah. That's fine. That's right.
Right. Okay. So for people who are watching this and planning to get involved, Deb has declared that she will get up extra early just to watch Andy. So.
Well, yes, it'll be all day coverage. So you don't have to. You can tune in at a normal hour if that's okay, and we'll probably still be going. And obviously, the beauty of this is once we've finished, it'll all be one video that's up anyway. So you can always watch it the next day, the day after, month after. So there's quite a little different strings to this.
Oh, McGovern has arrived. Now, we've still got my podcast with you, Wendy, is the last thing that we're going to show after we've done this little promo with Andy. And so that's going to happen in a little while. And so that's going to be the last thing of this little kind of stream. So there you go. We had Andy's announcement, then your 2001 speech, then your talk with Bekoff, and then the TARS thing, and then it's going to be the thing. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, NAM goes global. Indeed.
Yeah, it's got, like I said, it's gone from potentially being quite a small, contained thing to, well, why shouldn't everyone be involved? Especially as we know, I'm pretty sure there's a similar event going on. I don't know if it's their National Animal Rights March or what, but I know there's a big event going on Saturday in Denmark too, because Tash Peterson's advertised to be there. I'm not 100% sure what their event is focused on, but again, these are, so all of this kind of stuff can be kind of put together. I think they're only an hour ahead time difference.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in Ireland this year because the National Animal Rights Association, NARA, they often do a march, and they did one last year, I believe, but they certainly did them all before the pandemic. I know that next month Dublin Veg Fest is coming up, but I'm not actually quite sure what happened to the Irish National Animal Rights March, but there you go.
Yeah.
Right, so is there anything else you want to say?
No, obviously, I think Ronnie will join us at some point. I don't know anyone else that's confirmed. Obviously, everyone's more than welcome to sort of interact with us in any way, shape, or form. If anyone wants to submit something beforehand, get in touch with me. Facebook or info@helpgoingvegan.info is the email address.
Again, you know much more about the technology than I do. So are you kind of talking about doing kind of like StreamYard like this, but also TikTok and
So as we are now, we usually use the Vegan Review page or your page on Facebook, don't we? And then like our 2 YouTubes. So if we swap my YouTube, say, for the National Animal Rights one, and we swap your Facebook for the National Animal Rights one, then we're already doing it in 3 places. And then I'm going to borrow my dad's laptop and I'll TikTok everything we do.
Okay, well, I think you might have to go into the technical part of StreamYard to do that.
Yeah, and I'll sign in. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's not a problem. But yeah, we'll make sure it's all set up. I mean, even if we have a tester at 10 o'clock or something on Saturday just to double check all these things work. But yeah,
you want to work even longer.
TikTok. I didn't mention TikTok on the video in my promotional video. I forgot all about it, and it occurred to me earlier. But yeah, as long as I borrow my dad's laptop, there's nothing stopping me literally just streaming on TikTok like I quite often do. Everything that's on my screen. So as long as we control everything from StreamYard, TikTok will just receive that and stream it again. We're covering all platforms then potentially, except Instagram, because we don't really have a presence on there, to be honest, or know how to use it.
What about Twitter?
Twitter, I'll monitor. Obviously, I don't know if you can go live on Twitter in any way, shape, or form, but I will monitor the NARM Twitter for anyone that tags them. Yes, but I don't know if you can go live on Twitter. Can you? I'm not sure. Twitter's not something I know too much about.
No, I got to admit that defeats me as well. My own question, but yeah, I don't know that. I'm sure.
I think there'll be plenty there, Wendy. And actually, now technically, no pressure, but you'll have a far bigger audience than you would have had before. Because now you're being beamed all around the world.
Yeah, I messaged Wendy before, and I said I mentioned in the description of this that Wendy is not doing the same talk as she did in 2021. So I messaged saying no pressure, Wendy, just come up with a completely brand new thing. And but I know that already that Wendy is going to include the language part because that's very important. So I know that for a fact, and that bit should stay because it's so important.
Absolutely, yeah, and not just important, completely as relevant as it was when you said it last year. It's not like anyone's listened and made the changes. So yeah, absolutely needs reiterating.
Look at this experienced broadcaster of podcasts and live streams is saying yikes. When nobody's buying this.
We both know that even if she hadn't written anything and she just literally had to wing it, it would be absolutely fine. So yeah,
of course it would. Wendy. Right. So, okay. Well, in that case, I suppose we better play the last bit.
Like I said, there's just if there's any big changes, obviously I will announce it. But as it stands, there's nothing else to say that we haven't already said. And we'll just add things as we know them. Yeah, we only really came up with the idea like yesterday, so it's all very fresh and early at the moment. But yeah, I think it all will end up being a blessing in disguise in terms of how many other people now can interact and be involved.
Well, Andy, I don't know about fresh and early. Fresh and scary, I think, is the word to use.
It's certainly been an experience. That's all I'll say.
Well, I'm glad that you made it, and it's been great for you to do this little thing. And also, if you want to watch Andy's announcement again, you can do that on Andy's YouTube channel as well. That's a standalone thing, and you can also share it as well. So if you shared it around all the places that you know. Then that means that more people will go, oh wow, so I can be part of it as well.
Yeah, the video is uploaded directly to Facebook as well. I know that sometimes people are a little bit reluctant to click away from Facebook, so it's on Facebook, so you can share it directly for those people that don't like clicking YouTube links.
Yeah, you can't click away from Facebook now, can you?
Personally, I mean, I can understand why people don't like doing it sometimes, because it'll ask you to sign in and all these different things that people don't like doing. But in terms of audio quality, it's significantly better to listen on YouTube.
Yeah, normally when you go thinking it goes open in app, doesn't it? And that's what I always do.
That's what I think a lot of people try and avoid. Yeah, on Facebook they just have to click play. There's no effort.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, that just sounds like laziness to me, Andy. But
I mean, it is what it is, right?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to start this video, and then so we'll be visible for a couple of minutes, and then we'll disappear. But I'm going to also make sure that we're at the beginning of it, because it might start too early, but we'll see. So thanks everybody for tuning in. So this is the last little clip, but I think it's about 40 minutes long. So enjoy is the word. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Not endure.
It's different. What can I do differently? And I started to switch.
Go back.
So hi folks, hi Earthlings, as I say sometimes. This is on Human Non-Human Relations podcast. This is, I think, the third one we've done as video. If you're hearing audio only, it's because the video didn't turn out. But so we're trying the video anyway. So this is number 46 of the series. I call it an occasional series because I hardly ever do it anymore, really. But we've managed to get through to 46 shows. This is the 46th. And my special guest today is Wendy McGovern, an unforgettable surname. So, we might explain that later.
Getting that right, Roger. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Wendy is associated with something called Thrive Vegan World, which is a podcast and an up-and-coming website. The podcast is really good, so I recommend that you check that out. So the best place is Facebook right now. Then is it, Wendy?
Well, I usually share the links on there, but you can get the podcast from any of the standard places where you'd get a podcast. So on all the major platforms, so you should be able to get it anywhere, I think.
In that case, I'll probably contact you after this, because I've never been able to do all that. You know, like put it all onto everything. I just have it on Blogger, I think, and that's all. So it's not on iTunes. It's not. There's this thing called the RSS link. I don't even do that. So my podcast never gets listened to by any people. So welcome to Wendy and the listeners. There you go. So Wendy, you've been vegan for 21 years, and you first bumped into an Uncaged. Was it an event or a stall? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because Uncaged is almost like unknown. I mean, it's still running, isn't it?
No, they changed actually. So actually, and that was way before I went vegan. That was way back when I was still living at home with my folks, before I went off to uni. So I was kind of on a day out in Sheffield with a friend, and we just used to head off up to Sheffield because I'm from Rotherham. We'd head off on a day out. It was like a day out to go up to Sheffield and look around the shops. You know,
the excitement of Sheffield, eh?
It was really exciting. It was all the big shops in Sheffield, and particularly looking through the music shops, you know, going through all the vinyls and going through all the clothes shops and stuff. Like we were into all the punky stuff, and so we'd go all around the shops. And then as we were walking back to get the bus, we came across a stall, and of course those stalls back in the day, especially when you have all the posters and the flyers out, they're very eye-catching because you can see pictures that you're thinking, oh my god, what's that? And it's the pictures of other animals. Often, it's the kind of traumatic pictures that you see, and it drew my attention. And I just remember getting this real feeling in my body of just being flooded with this emotion of like, oh my god, this is just horror, this is horrific, how is this happening? And that was like my first experience of kind of animal rights, really, and that just drew me, and I was immediately just so drawn to getting into campaigns and things. Like I joined Uncaged Campaigns, it was at the time, and I just got involved in lots of campaigns and things like that. But Dr. Lyons, yeah, at the time he wasn't doctor, but then he got his doctorate later on. So I did quite a lot of stuff with them for a while. But that was my first introduction to animal rights. But I wasn't vegan then; I was still vegetarian. It was the days when I didn't even know what vegan was. I hardly knew what vegetarian was. It was just one of those, not up in Rotherham in those days.
So yeah, that was my introduction.
So did you start campaigning before you went vegan, or the other way around?
Yeah, before I went vegan, I was vegetarian for quite a while, and involved in animal rights and activism way before I even became aware of vegan. And actually, it was through the campaign that I started to become aware of it, because I started to kind of get magazines and flyers and things like this that started talking about the dairy industry and the egg industry and things like that, and that really opened my eyes then to like the other horrors of the other industries, because before that it was just, you know, the thought of flesh, meat, like, we're not eating meat anymore, that's the thing to do, don't wear leather, etc. But it was, dairy and eggs was still not in my awareness. It was like, oh, you don't kill the animals to get the cheese and the milk, so that's fine. But then once my eyes were open to that took me then down the road to becoming vegan. So yeah.
Similar story to me, I guess, because I did that thing. I got involved with the Hunt Saboteurs, and then you did that thing of getting leaflets and talks and all that in the van on the way and that on the way back. And then suddenly this whole other world of animal use and exploitation, rights violations, all kind of opened out, and thought, well, you know, there's no point in just doing this. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And, I was lucky because vegetarianism never made any sense to me right from the start, and so I kind of skipped the vegetarian phase, which I'm always kind of grateful for, you know.
Yeah.
So apart from Thrive, you're obviously part of the team, along with myself and Jeremy and Brad and Tom, of the Animal Rights Show. And in fact, I think you've been credited now of kind of conceiving and running our kind of most popular show so far, which was the second one of the burnout ones. And it's something from that prompted me to invite you to the podcast today, because you talked about in one of your slides, you talked about this issue of inner dialogue. And yeah, can you remember what you were getting at there, and why it's important in terms of activism?
Yeah, that was a really interesting show, actually, especially because I was leading it, and I kind of drew on my experience as a coach to kind of bring what I've learned and used as a coach into.
I'm a double-decker bus myself.
I can tell. That just reminded me of double deckers. Do you remember double decker chocolate bars? When you said that, I just bought that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Were they one of the ones that got renamed something else, like Snickers or something?
I don't think they did. I think they just disappeared.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I remember the days of marathon. I don't think many people remember the old marathons, do they?
Yeah, I remember that, unfortunately.
Showing our age. So yeah, so I was drawing on my experience as a coach to kind of bring what I've learned, what I've used with clients through coaching into kind of helping activists with activism, because we were talking about how to avoid burnout and how to really kind of thrive and flourish as an individual in terms of being a strong individual with resilience in a sustainable movement, because I think that's a problem that we see. And the inner dialogue, I think that's something that's really important, because our beliefs really are very powerful, and whenever we're talking to ourselves, we have that inner voice. That inner voice is kind of reinforcing beliefs back to ourselves. So if we're talking to ourselves really harshly and we've got a harsh inner critic, we are then sort of reinforcing those beliefs that we're no good, or we're rubbish, or we're not as good as that person, or we're useless, or whatever it might be. I'm not a confident person. All these things that we tell ourselves, we are then playing out in the world, because we're reinforcing beliefs back to ourselves. And it's one thing that really helped me when I first got into self-development and coaching, was to start picking up on what my inner dialogue was with myself. And it was often very negative. And I think most people, if they really stop to pay attention and observe what their inner dialogue is, it will often be quite negative. But that negativity
is debilitating, can't it?
It's very debilitating, yeah, because you will play out those thoughts and beliefs in your daily life, and that creates your reality. And then you see that reality, and then it reinforces the beliefs back to yourself. So our beliefs are actually really, really powerful. So the inner dialogue, I think for me, the first thing that I started to do was to just pay attention and just notice, like, am I speaking harshly to myself? Am I telling myself I'm rubbish, I'm useless, I didn't do that very well? Because, and then I started to kind of think, okay, well, how can I then make this different? What can I do differently? And I started to switch the dialogue and become less of a critic and more of a coach. So I now think of my inner voice as an inner coach. And I think it's not that we should ignore that voice. I think it's just we should use that voice to serve us and to help empower us rather than to disempower us. So it's about maybe listening to some of the messages and asking yourself, right, is that message you're giving me right now, is that serving me? Is it empowering me? Is it helping me in this situation? Because sometimes the voice might have a strong message. It might have an important thing for you to listen to and pay attention to, like you're not doing something as well as you could, or so you're not aligned with something that you're doing. So it's important to say, okay, what is the message? Is there a message? And then if there is, what can I do better? What can I do differently? So you actually sort of thank that voice and go, thank you for pointing something out to me. Now I'm going to take that on board and try and do this better, but not constantly beat yourself up, not constantly be hard on yourself. I think that's what I was really talking about with that.
Yeah, I want to just focus on one thing you said there, was the empowerment part, because I wonder if that's I mean, if I'm really getting this concept right, because I'm really interested in it. Is that what would say, for example, why people say to people like Earthling Ed, oh, you know, you're so calm, you're so rational, you know, you're so good, because they've got this dialogue saying you couldn't do that, you know, so it's disempowering in that sense. You know, it could be that, as I said, debilitating, because what we really want to do is work out a way of empowering people and think, I could do that, rather than, oh, aren't you wonderful because you can do that. That would.
Yeah, I think there is an element of that in there, because I think it comes into comparison as well, because I think people will look at someone like Earthling Ed or another of the more high-profile people in the movement and
entrepreneurs,
and they will, and maybe, and especially I think when someone is put up on a pedestal a little bit, then there's that element of you're beneath them. So you look up, when we even say the language, don't we? We look up to people, so then we feel beneath them. So then we put these people on a pedestal, and it's not necessarily their fault or their doing. You know, as humans, I think we do this. We look up to leaders. We want these figures, but then we always feel beneath them, and we always feel that we're not as good as that. So then comes in the element of comparison, which then can feed in with that inner dialogue of, oh, I'm not as good as them, I could never do this, and look at how good they are, they're out there doing all this work, and I'm just, oh, I'm not achieving anything. It can really play out. But then you can, really stop yourself getting involved in activism, because you might feel you're never going to be as good as that. But I think the more we elevate people, the worse that's going to be, because we're creating this real distinction between down here or up there, and not seeing all capable. Yeah,
that's interesting. It all feeds into the kind of de-radicalization of social movements, in the sense that once you start having leaders and followers, or professionals and citizens, or civilians, as it was put one time, you're in a kind of a weird place then, because really what you want to do is empower everybody as equals. Even in sociology, in terms of social movement theory, we try to get around that, because the leaders of a social movement were called prime movers in order not to call them leaders. At the same time, it was kind of acknowledging the fact that some people do more than others, if you like. So there's always that, but certainly empowerment within the movement is very important. We need to figure out ways of, rather than kind of aren't I brilliant, it's kind of you can do this. That's the kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that'll be an important part of it, because obviously, I'm really interested in kind of empowering the grassroots, and I think it's people in the grassroots. The reason that they pay money to the entrepreneurs or to the national groups is because they believe they can't do that themselves, or they won't do it as good, and that must all be part of the inner dialogue that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, our belief systems are so powerful. I don't think we really understand. I mean, I understand it a little bit more now, because I've read about it and looked into it. But I think generally we don't realize how strong our belief systems are, and how from even before the womb, we're starting to be programmed with information through our mother and the environment that she's in, and all this kind of thing when we're in the womb, and then obviously when we're out, and we're being programmed and conditioned by our experiences around us. those beliefs, especially from those formative years, are so powerful. And if you have got those beliefs from being young, especially of like, oh, you're lacking, you're not good enough, you're not confident, you're shy, or this, whatever those beliefs might be, you are going to play those out in your latter years. You will have modeled your behavior on your, you know, your parents, your grandparents, your environment around you. Your teachers will have given you information, your, you know, your peers, your friends, your either government, even you pick up so much programming. Those beliefs are so powerful. And but the things, the messages you internalize about yourself, especially, will play out in so many different ways in your life. Just an example of how this is a good example of how powerful the your belief systems are and how they play out. Actually, just I'm thinking of a program I saw quite a long time ago, but they wanted to look into the concept of luck, because you know, you get people who will think of themselves as lucky, and then you get other people who say they're unlucky, and you tend to see this, you get this in people. So they were kind of running this kind of experiment, or whatever, you know, you might call it, and they had sort of two groups of people, and they framed it in gambling. So they thought, right, how can we kind of play out luck? Gambling's like a great way to test this. So they had these two groups of people. One group was a group of people who thought themselves as very lucky, and the other group thought themselves as very unlucky. And so they took these two groups of people and they took them to a casino. Now they gave the two groups equal amount of chips and kind of sent them on their way to play, you know, to play roulette, and they monitored the game. And so the game played out, and, you know, ups and downs and whatever happened, the game finished. So then the important thing was like what happened, what the results. So they took these two groups again separately again, and they interviewed each of them, and they found the following. So they found that the people in the lucky group, and they said, oh, how did the game go? What were your experiences? And the lucky people were saying, oh, yeah, I had a great game. You know, I lost a few, I won a few, but actually overall, I had a very good experience. It was very positive. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. So then they spoke to the unlucky group and said, what was your experiences? And as you might expect, you know, the people in that group were saying, no, actually, I had quite a bad experience. I definitely came out very worse than I would have wanted to. And all in all, it was quite negative. So it's kind of like, okay, is this actually a true thing? Then are some people lucky and others unlucky? But then they kind of analyze the results of the game and the chips and the losses and the wins. And what they found that over the two groups, actually, overall, the results were very on par and pretty balanced. So the only difference with those two groups of people were how they perceived themselves and the perception of the experience of the game, nothing to do with the type of person they are. But that just goes to show how we literally will have a perception of ourselves, and then we play that out. And then what our brain does, because we have a system in the brain called the reticular articulation system, which what it does, it filters back information to you that it thinks is important, and our brain will find information to prove back our own beliefs. An example of that, you know, do you ever have something where, for example, if you suddenly decided you were going to buy a car, and that car was a particular type of car, and it was going to be red, for example, and then you took yourself out on the road before you've got this car, you've got in mind this car you want to buy, you'd be surprised at how many of those cars and the red car you're going to see on your travels, because suddenly your brain thinks, this is an important piece of information, let me filter that back. So you will see so many more red cars, and you think, oh, where have all these red cars come from all of a sudden? But they were always there, but maybe your brain wouldn't have thought about them before or thought them important enough. So you might have driven along that road oblivious to the red cars before, but now you're really seeing them because your brain is going, this is important, filter it back. So we're always looking to prove back our own belief system. So we'll see it, we'll seek that evidence out and always filter that back to ourselves. So yeah, it's very, very powerful stuff.
It seems connected to the ideas of things like self-fulfilling prophecies and all that kind of idea. Going back to the womb, there is this theory that even if you play certain types of music, as it were, to the forming fetus, that will affect their personality and stuff. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And if the mother is in a stressful situation, because obviously when we have stress, our bodies fill with different hormones. So we have like cortisol and adrenaline and all these hormones that are pumped around the body. So if the mother is in a stressful environment, and especially if that's a chronic environment where, you know, she literally is stressed a lot of the time, those hormones are going to really affect the development of the fetus, and the fetus is developing in order to be prepared to be born into a stressful environment. So even from that young, you're adapting to your environment and hormones and stress and things like this. So, yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
It's interesting that. Actually, as you know, I used to teach the sociology of humor, and there's this old joke about this woman who knew she was having twins, male twins. So she used to say at night time for them, you know, be good, you know, be conscientious, be a gentleman, you know, and this kind of stuff. So she ended up being pregnant for 30 years. And so they so they decided that in the end they would have to do a cesarean section. And so they opened up the womb, and there was two perfectly formed kind of gentlemen in there, and one's going, after you, and the other one said, no, I insist after you, you know. So it does work, the womb thing. So, it's not a particularly good joke, but it's one that I remember. I always remember the bad jokes for now. So going back to vivisection, this is an interesting movement issue, isn't it? Because vivisection has got very little kind of traction in the movement at the moment, whereas it used to be the foremost issue. And I know that, you know, you're interested in that. Mel Broughton and people like John Curtin have talked about that. And do you have a kind of idea about what's going on there? Is it just because everything's based on veganism now, or what? You know?
Yeah, I've tried to work this out myself and had lots of conversations with different people about it. And when I started, and perhaps like same as you, Roger, when you started, a lot of the movement was anti-vivisection.
Most of it.
Yeah, most of it was very dominant in the movement, and it was like that for a long time, along with kind of, you know, hunt stabbing and you know, anti-fur campaigns and things like that.
Yeah,
so it almost feels like there's been a shift, especially in the last few years, with the rise in veganism, maybe. And I think now, because as we've said before, like there didn't used to be such a thing as vegan campaigning. It was campaigning against vivisection, or as we just mentioned, there wasn't such a thing as campaigning and trying to outreach people to becoming vegan. That didn't really exist. And I think it's almost now the shift has happened where that is now dominant in the movement, is like it's the outreach to become vegan, you know, which I'm not saying this is a bad thing or anything like that, not at all, but I think it's almost, there's been a massive shift away from vivisection, and I don't know if it's also partly because of the campaigns that happened and in the past and everything that happened with say ALF and the likes of Mel and all the, you know, people who really were in these campaigns, but then obviously ended up going to prison and things like this. And the Shack campaign and all this, and I don't know if also the industry has also made it much more challenging as well to, like, you know, to get in to get exposure, even to get footage in the laboratories, and I just think it just seems like it's been a real shift, and maybe now it feels that, oh, that's really much more difficult now as well. It's more difficult to get footage and get into laboratories. It's much more difficult to speak to people about vivisection than it is about veganism. It's much more, it just seems less available almost to new activists. I feel that's the way it feels to me. I don't really understand how we can shift it apart from just putting more focus into campaigns, which I know is happening. I know Mel is back on with a lot of campaigns with Speak, and I know there's an element of this being introduced into London now with campaigns outside different universities and things in London. So I know that there's a little bit more happening with it, but it just, you know, I really think about this a lot and think, well, how can we do more effective campaigning now in terms of anti-vivisection? What can we do more? Who can we speak to? Who can we talk to? How do we raise the awareness to the public about this? It seems like it's a very difficult area to talk to people about as well. A different energy to veganism, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that the you know, the advent of a vaccine for the COVID-19 virus will cause a division in the vegan movement?
I can see that already, actually. I can see there are people who are very much pro pro-vaccine and really kind of on board with what COVID is all about, and we have to, you know, we have to look after ourselves, and if we're going to save our lives and all this, we have to go along with that. And then other people are not even believing that COVID is even real. There's almost so much going on. I can see in different, you know, in different ways, people having these different opinions, and then also that, you know, the theory of like, we're not going to have the vaccine, even regardless of vivisection, in that what are they trying to pump into us? What are they giving us in this vaccine? But definitely in terms of the experimentation that's been done on other animals with the vaccine, I think a lot of people, I think the core of people feel very strongly against that, to be fair, from my experience and what I'm hearing people talking about. What do you think about that? What's your view on the vaccine?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, some people ask me if I'm one of these kind of anti-vaxxers, and I said I'm not, but I'm anti-vivisection, and so that obviously colours my attitude towards vaccines. I mean, vaccines are a difficult one from the anti-vivisection thing, in the sense that even all the new batches, as far as I remember, or at least it used to be like this, every new batch would have to be tested. You know, just again for the toxicities, make sure that it's still kind of okay, because obviously, you know, viruses kind of evolve and change, and I suppose vaccines have got to do that as well. And so there's probably a little bit of kind of tinkering going on all the time in response to what's going on in the changes in the virus itself. So that means that there's a continual cycle of vivisection going on in terms of vaccines, as far as I know. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, all kind of old-time vegans have maybe been okay about using certain aspirins that were developed, you know, 70 years ago or something, and never changed. You know, they were never updated. You know, and so therefore, okay, there was some experimentation, but it was way back then, and it never got repeated. Whereas with vaccines, you've got a more difficult problem, I think. So yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a tricky one. I mean, the Impossible Burger created a problem. Exactly the same issue. You know, interesting.
With any medication, you're going to get that. Any treatment, if you go into hospital for any kind of treatment, you know, you're faced with that dilemma, aren't you? Like, should I accept this medication, knowing that it has been and probably is still being tested on other animals, and it creates a real dissonance. I know for me, it's a very difficult one, and I avoid as much as I possibly can. I really do, and I haven't yet been faced with that, you know, a big health problem that would require, you know, sort of serious.
Yeah, that's the thing. When it becomes a necessity, that's the issue. And I think most people are very kind of forgiving in that sense then. But in my experience over the years, most vegans tend to be pretty kind of low in terms of their pharmaceutical kind of intake. I mean, I always tend to think that, you know, your average kind of Joe soap, you could pick them up and rattle them. You know, the number of times they're just kind of, you know, popping pills for this, that, and the other, you know, almost like, you know, the immediate kind of first, you know, inkling of anything. Oh, I reach for the bottle, you know. And I don't think vegans do that. And so in that sense, there's a difference in the first place. But it is that kind of life-saving, life-threatening kind of issues that then come very sharply to focus, I suppose.
I have that question: do we actually really need them? And I was speaking to John Owen a couple of weeks ago, and he has had very serious heart condition diagnosed years and years ago, and he was on a lot of medication. But in the last few months, he's taken himself gradually off all his medication, pretty much. I think nothing, if like one thing he's left with. And so it goes to show that sometimes, I think, again, it goes back to that conditioning and beliefs. It's like, if we believe we need it, we need it. It's like, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right, because whatever you believe will prove to be true. So sometimes I think our beliefs are probably feeding in even to our physical conditions, and then we believe we need the medication or we're going to die. So it's, you know, it's very...
There's some interesting sociology on that too, in the sense that it was found that patients would go to their doctor and they would feel that the doctor had not done their job unless they got a script, that the end product had to be a script. And if the doctor just talked through the issues and maybe gave some lifestyle advice or just some general kind of advice on all kinds of different kind of variables and spectrums, it wasn't good enough. They wanted the script, and if without that, they thought the doctor wasn't very good. You know, so there's this kind of pressure always from the patient, as well as the pressure from the pharmaceutical industry. in the sense that, you know, doctors have forever been taken to conferences which end up being like golf tournaments, this kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of pressure on doctors, which is why, you know, when people switch from one doctor to the other, one doctor might go, oh, well, we'll put you on another kind of regime, you know, and essentially they're going on to the kind of pharmaceutical business that sponsors them. And so, you know, everything gets changed, you know. So it's a bit of a racket in that sense. I understand, you know, we've got to be a bit skeptical. I think we were probably more skeptical in the past, perhaps cynical, I suppose, in the sense that, you know, pharmaceutical industry was, I mean, I always saw it in a pretty bad light, you know, profit driven, you know, they didn't collaborate, they didn't share data. I mean, even now in COVID, I doubt if the big pharmaceutical businesses are sharing data with each other, which in terms of a global pandemic is exactly what they should do. If you know, human health on a global scale was really that important, they would forget about profits and you know business secrets and all that kind of stuff, and they would collaborate. But I'm not sure if it's happening, you know. And of course that just means that there's going to be more animal tests then, because there's going to be duplication going on rather than it all just being coordinated. Typical pharmaceutical kind of things. I mean, you don't even see. I mean, you'll know names like Hans Royce. You know the kind of scientific anti-vivisection. They were real big in the 80s, and you don't hear any of those names anymore in terms of, or you don't hear about anything about on video. You don't hear about their books. You know, so anti-vivisection has kind of really dropped off the cliff. You know, so it's. Interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if it'll make a comeback. Maybe. I mean, it could be something to do with the numbers, I suppose, in the sense that, you know, obviously animal use in terms of animal agriculture, you know, massively dwarfs vivisection. I mean, you know, it hardly registers if you did a comparison. But we talk about billions compared with millions, you know.
I have heard activists say that actually, in terms of, well, if we're going to do this on a relative scale, the numbers of animal agriculture far, you know, swamp those you know, the other animals who are in the laboratory sort of thing. And I think it is just more accessible. I think it's easier as well for activists who are especially new to the movement or new vegans to be, you know, to come into groups that are talking about diet and cruelty. We know we can have a whole conversation about that, cruelty and the suffering that's going on. I think that is quite easy, isn't it? It's quite an easy. It's not easy as in, you know, it's not easy to do, but I mean, it's easier to kind of advocate for those kind of things, for a change of diet. It's accessible to the activists, but I think it's also something that the public are more aware of. They're more aware of, like, oh, I've heard of vegan, I've heard of plant-based, I've heard of what's going on, and it's just more, there's something that the person can do immediately about it as well. Like if the person does decide to, okay, I'm going to try reducing my animal product content, you know, intake, or I'm going to try plant-based, I'm going to try becoming vegan, whatever it might be, there's something that they can take action on. Whereas with vivisection, there's some things you can do, like you can stop purchasing certain products and go for products that are cruelty-free and vegan and those kind of things in terms of your toiletries. But when it comes to medication and the scientific and progressive science that's going on, it almost feels like, what do you ask them to do? What call to action is there to ask people to do? I can tell them about it, but then what do they do? And I think there's that as well. I think we feel a bit like, what do we do about it? And so then how do we get other people to do something? And we can say, go and try this product, go and try stopping that from your diet, try to wear these kind of clothes. You know, we can do something very practical.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I remember back in the 80s, I went to a doctor in Manchester, and I said, I just want a diagnosis. I don't want any treatment from you. I just want you to tell me what's the score. And he was really upset with me, you know, because well, that's not the deal, you know. You kind of, you know, I tell you what's wrong with you, and then treat you. And I said, well, I don't want the treatment. I just want the diagnosis, and then I can try and sort it out, you know. But I think a lot of people did that kind of thing. So going back to the podcast.
I was going to ask you, do you think doctors have got the saviour complex? They want to fix you.
Yeah, it's all over the place, isn't it? You know, It even comes into social movements, I've heard. So speaking of social movements and the podcast element of it, you obviously got some future guests and future plans. So what are all those? Tell me.
Oh, you want my secrets?
Yeah.
The minute I've got one in edit that I recorded a few weeks ago, and I just have been so well, let's say lack of time, not lack of time because we've all got the same time, but I've just been filling my hours with so much stuff that I haven't made the time to edit yet. But that one's coming out this week. That's going to be Ronnie Lee. He's going to be on there. And then I really want to get more women on the show. As you know, I've spoken to you about this before. I want to get more women on the show. So I've reached out to a few different women, and I'm not sure if I'm going to tell you actually, because I think some of them are still in the kind of
and if one of them's Ingrid, just don't tell me.
That'll be interesting. I might get you and Ingrid on together. That would be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. I'd like to ask her a few questions actually, but there you go.
So yeah, I've got a woman in mind who definitely wants to do it. She's just got a few other things to do before that. She'll be an interesting one, and I've got in mind a few people. I want to speak to a few people who are running sanctuaries as well, just about how the sanctuaries run, the kind of politics that are going on in sanctuaries, and how it actually is when we're trying to care for the other animals that are actually we've taken out of those situations that we want them out of. I mean, obviously we say they're not fully liberated, but they're as liberated as we can get them.
Really, but it's interesting that actually one thing that I've done recently, last couple of weeks, but it's not published now because it's going to be part of VegFest Summerfest, is I spoke to Harold Brown and Declan Bowens together because they were both farmers who became vegans, and they had like a fascinating take, and I wanted to try and create a conversation between two people in that situation. So Declan was from Ireland and Harold from North America. It was really fascinating because they kind of knew the ins and outs of the industry that they now oppose.
Yeah.
In a unique way. Nobody can kind of come up to them and go, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," and they go, "Well, actually,
Yeah. I look forward to that one.
Yeah, I can burst. That happens on the street of Dublin quite often. You lot, you've never been on a farm, and you go, "Excuse me," the Declan of, and all that, and that bursts that bubble straight away. It's very useful to have an ex-farmer on your vegan stall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Yeah, I really look forward to that conversation because that'll be
yeah, it was good. It came out well, and I really enjoyed the interaction because they started asking each other questions and stuff, and it's really good. And they were talking about the difference between subsidies in the different countries and all that. But I won't spill any more of those beans because that's going to come up in August. So I want to thank you for being my guest, and I look forward to seeing you again, which is probably going to be in a couple of hours because we've got a planning meeting for the show coming up.
We do.
Yeah. So we've got a show on the 1st of August. So I'll probably get this out before that. So we might as well advertise it. So the Amorite show, next show is on the 1st of August, and it's called Beyond Welfarism, and it's talking about trying to introduce rights-based language into whatever activism that people are into, I suppose. So in terms of showing computer footage on the streets or just stalls or whatever. And so that's going to be an interesting one.
That is going to be interesting.
Yeah, feeds into all our kind of Tom Reagan stuff and all that. So,
the rights way, I think we've got two titles, haven't we? We've got the Communicating the Rights Way, and then Beyond Welfarism. And I can't remember the end of that one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we smashed them together and just. I mean, it's got kind of like a title in the meme or the thing, and it's got a longer one as part of the description. So 1st of August, folks. So thanks again, Wendy, for being my guest, and I wish you well and good luck with your podcast. And I do these so infrequently. You're bound to catch up with me, so you'll be overtaking me within a couple of months. So,
thanks for having me on, Roger. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
You're welcome. You take care.
You too. See you soon.
Yeah. Bye, Earthlings.
Bye, everyone.